Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation in Spain. Day 216 of the current situation. That's right, day 216 of the current health crisis in this country. And today it's all about, unfortunately, again, more places in Spain that are going to see restrictions imposed in coming hours. Firstly, thanks to all of the people that left comments on recent videos. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening as usual in the comment section. A big thanks to people that supported the channel through a small donation. You can see your name here. Thanks to the people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your continuing support. Now, as I said, it's all about restrictions here in Spain at the moment. Every day there seems to be a new city or town that has restrictions imposed on it. The latest one is Salamanca, and we can see here that the government of Castilla y León has decided to confine Salamanca and limit gatherings to 6 people throughout the community due to the worrying increase in infections. Salamanca will close on the night from Friday to Saturday after exceeding 500 infections per 100,000 inhabitants. The government has prohibited the consumption of food and drink at bars inside bars and restaurants, and smoking has been prohibited throughout the autonomous community at outdoor seating areas. So Salamanca, they're the latest city in Spain to go into a confinement situation, as the health situation has been steadily getting out of control in recent weeks. And no need to ask yourself why the situation is so bad in Salamanca, as we can see here from headlines like this, that a busy night in Salamanca for the police, with 45 parties in flats, 85 fines handed out in bars, and crowds in drinking areas. And the mayor of Salamanca has come out and said that people there need to comply with restrictions, especially young people. So it seems to be the trend around the country, not only in Salamanca, but we saw in Granada, Valencia, other places around Spain, that young people can't get it into their head that they got to cut back on the partying, as the rest of the population will suffer as a result of their irresponsible actions. Now, with the health situation in Spain seemingly out of control again, and in other parts of Europe, people's attention is now turning towards Christmas and whether their Christmas celebrations are going to be affected. We can see here that the health minister has come out today and warned that Christmas will not be like last year. The high speed of transmission of the coronavirus, with more than 13,000 new cases reported this Thursday, continues to promote restrictions that, according to the Minister of Health, Salvador Illa, will not solve by themselves the worrying situation that is currently being experienced by the pandemic. This is not something that will be solved with 15 days, neither in Catalonia nor in Spain nor in Europe. The situation is worrying. We must take precautions and we have to take it seriously, he said in an interview with RAC 1, in which he also warned that 6 complicated months are coming and that Christmas will not be like Christmas last year. So a complicated 6 months ahead, according to the health minister, and people need to take it seriously. Now, the health ministry has also come out and given us an idea of what some of the future restrictions may look like in Spain. And we can see here that the health ministry is planning to close the interior of bars and restaurants in the municipalities with the highest incidence rates. The Ministry of Health and the autonomous communities have on the table the draft of a plan that establishes measures for municipalities with 5,000 inhabitants most at risk from coronavirus. Although it opens the door to confinement, it does not make it mandatory at any of the levels, but it does propose closing the interiors of bars and restaurants in those that are in the 2 most serious stages, high and extreme. Now, as requested, the good news story of the day is this one here, and it is that Spain's Chief Health Officer, Mr. Simon, believes that Spain is in a stabilization stage of infections prior to a possible decline. Fernando Simon has stated that the incidence rate of the COVID-19 epidemic in Spain is in a stabilization phase, the scenario prior to a possible decline. However, he has clarified that despite this stabilization, territorial differences are still important, with autonomous communities where the situation continues to be very worrying, such as Navarra, more than 800 cases per 100,000, Madrid 451 cases per 100,000, or Castilla y León 418 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. So there we go. According to Mr. Simon, we are in a stabilization phase prior to a decline, but according to the health minister, we have a difficult 6 months ahead. So who do we believe? Now, as we just saw, Salamanca goes into a confinement situation this weekend, and it joins more than 30 Spanish towns that will be confined this weekend by the expansion of the coronavirus. The Spanish towns with mobility restrictions due to the coronavirus are diverse and range from large cities like Madrid capital to small towns like San Pedro de la Tarce. So 30 Spanish cities or towns will find themselves in a confinement situation this weekend. Now let's have a look at some of the health data around the country at the moment. Starting with Madrid, we can see the total amount of cases since the pandemic began. We can see the amount of new cases there at 2,870, the amount of cases diagnosed in the last 24 hours. The cumulative incidence rate sits at 450.94 per 100,000 people. Deaths in the last 7 days stands at 64. The hospital pressure, very important. We can see that there are currently 3,202 hospitalized COVID patients, and in the ICU units we have 475. If we look at Catalonia, we can see the total amount of cases there. The new cases there sit at 2,171, diagnosed in the last 24 hours 313, a cumulative incidence rate of 272.23, and if we go down to hospital pressure, we can see the amount of patients, and the pressure in intensive care unit sits at 21.24%, or in other words, 240 patients currently in ICU at the moment. And if we have a look at the Canary Islands, we can see the cumulative incidence rate there at 79.87, and hospital pressure there sits at 14.39%, with 60 patients currently in ICU in the Canary Islands. Now, if we have a look at some graphs of ICU occupation around Spain, we can see the different autonomous communities there and the situation that their ICU units find themselves in. And of course, as we saw before, Madrid quite high. So if you are in Spain at the moment, you can get an idea of where your autonomous community is at regarding the occupation of ICU beds. And some more graphs here showing the occupation of general hospital beds occupied by COVID patients around the country at the moment. And of course, as we have seen, Madrid is the place with most stress on the hospitals at the moment, and we can see that here according to the graphs. Now, as we know, Spain's two biggest cities, Madrid and Barcelona, have restrictions at the moment, but the restrictions are different. For example, in Madrid, they're mainly mobility restrictions, but bars and restaurants continue to be open, although they close at around 11 o'clock. But Catalonia yesterday decided to close bars and restaurants down for the next 15 days. And we can see here that Madrid is in a state of alarm situation, but bars and restaurants are open. But Barcelona is without a state of alarm and without bars. So two different types of restrictions going on in the big cities here in Spain, and it's going to be interesting to see which measures prove to be most successful. Lots of people in Catalonia don't understand why they have taken that drastic measure of closing bars and restaurants, but it seems to be clear that when you read headlines like this one here, that 7 out of 10 infections in Spain can be attributed to the intense social life of the Spanish, and they're calling it their Achilles heel. Bars are the main transmission channel for the coronavirus, and therefore Catalonia has ordered the closure for the remainder of the month. So there we go, the love that Spanish people have for bars and their intense social life, one of the key reasons for infections at the moment, and they're calling this intense social life the Achilles heel of Spanish people at the moment. Now, finally, some news about the economy, and the government announced yesterday that they are preparing the budgets for 2021. Apparently, they have sent them to Brussels for their approval, and we can see here that the budgets for 2021 will include 7 billion more in new taxes. The government has sent the budget forecasts to Brussels, but they will not be finalised until they are negotiated with the parties and in social dialogue in the parliament. So there we go, the government has sent their budget plan to Brussels. The only thing they need to do is get it passed here in the parliament, but as we have seen in recent times, that is easier said than done. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from recent videos. First one here from Deanne. Hi Stuart, I'm quite surprised the Vuelta España is going ahead next week. With the issues the Giro has been having with competitors and team staff testing positive, I would have thought the sensible thing would be to cancel, considering the high number of infections and restrictions in many areas in Spain. Yeah, Deanne, thanks for the comment. The sensible thing probably would be to cancel the Vuelta de España this year, or the Spain tour, the cycling tour. But as we have seen, the Tour de France has gone ahead. The Giro in Italy has gone ahead, although as you mentioned there, it has been quite controversial this year with lots of people testing positive, and it seems that things in the Giro this year are not going according to plan. But of course, these competitions are big business, and that is the main reason, in my opinion, that it is going ahead. And probably a good idea to keep our eyes on the Vuelta and see what happens there over the next couple of weeks, as it's going to be an interesting one this year, I think. One here from No Name. Hey Stuart, thanks for the great videos. Why is Spain so reliant on tourism? This should be a wake-up call that an advanced economy cannot be reliant on the discretionary spending of foreigners, but I don't believe they will reform and are waiting to return to the past that may never return. Yeah, No Name, thanks for the comment. Spain reliant on tourism basically because it has all of the characteristics to make it a tourist country. It has history, monuments, good weather, beaches, cheap alcohol, and all of those things combine to make it a perfect holiday destination for many, many people. And the reason most likely that the economy becomes so reliant on tourism, not over the whole country, but in the main tourist areas, we've seen that the Canary Islands has a big reliance on tourism, is because it's so easy. You just set up a bar, you set up a restaurant, set up some other type of tourist business, and wait for the tourists to arrive and spend their money. So it's probably pretty easy money. One here from Brett. Hola Stuart, thanks for today's video. I was particularly interested in the update about Granada because I have some friends there. We have been locked down in Melbourne for quite some time, and the good news is that we have recorded 6 new cases across our state in the last 24 hours. We are hoping some of the draconian restrictions we have been experiencing will be eased on Sunday and we can start moving around again. Who would want to be a political leader at a time like this? Not me, that's for certain. Keep up the good work. Yeah, Brett, thanks for the comment. And you're right, the measures in Melbourne have been very, very strict, considering that the numbers that you have had there. I mentioned this in a video a couple of days ago, that the numbers in Australia are nothing like the numbers that we have in Europe at the moment. And you say there that you have 6 infections a day. I think we saw earlier that Spain yesterday had 13,000, and in Madrid, which is a city that you can compare to Melbourne because of population, we had something like 2,500. So things have been quite severe down there in Melbourne, but as you said, in coming days and weeks, you might get some of those restrictions lifted and you'll be able to go back to some type of normal life down there in Victoria. And unfortunately, you've lost the grand final this year. It's going to be held in Queensland, but hey, it's only going to be for 1 year, hopefully. One here from Clyde. Hola Stuart, can't wait for the ongoing, never-ending fiesta once the virus is behind us. Keep up the good work. Yeah, Clyde, thanks for the comment. Lots of people waiting for that big fiesta to happen when all of this is finally behind us. Unfortunately, we don't have an exact date for that. Might not be until next summer, might not be until 2022. Who knows? Who knows? We don't have a clear time frame for the end of this virus. And as we have seen, some people are not waiting for the virus to end before they start partying out of control. One here from Karen Dancer. I have been studying flamenco dancing for years in the US. Can you say something about how the arts and flamenco are surviving in Spain? Yeah, Karen, thanks for the comment. Haven't heard much about the flamenco scene. I'm not a big fan of flamenco, if I'm completely honest with you, but I have seen that it is an industry that is suffering at the moment, especially some of these flamenco places in cities like Madrid, cities like Granada, where there's not a big tourist element around at the moment. I think they call them tablao de flamenco, and apparently they are struggling because, as I said, there's no tourists there to fill those venues at the moment, and they're relying on local tourism if people are still willing to go to these places. And another characteristic is that they're quite small places a lot of the times, and it's been difficult for them to adapt, but hopefully the industry manages to survive. One here from Jose Manuel. Well, I am a Spaniard from Madrid, and I find your comments surprisingly well informed and balanced. Keep doing these videos, please. We Spaniards need other points of view, particularly if they come from well-informed people like you, who do their best to remain as neutral as possible, besides coming from another country and culture. After an incredible transition from the precedent regime to democracy with a huge consensus around most, not all key issues, we entered, maybe from about 10 years ago, under President Rodríguez Zapatero, socialist, into an increasing climate of polarization and even hate between the centre and the regions, richer and the poorer people, most of both from the middle class, left and right, and lately of most regions against all the others. It is increasingly self-destructive. So thank you for your comments and information, and keep up the good work. Yeah, Jose Manuel, thank you for your comments and glad to see that you like what I am doing, not like some other people who send me very irate emails occasionally. And you're right, that period here in Spain with Zapatero seemed to be the moment that the country started to separate again. I think it was primarily because he decided to dig up some of the problems from the past, and a lot of people weren't happy with that. And from what I understand, when the country went through that transition period, most people agreed that it was better to leave the past behind and not open up old wounds. But that's what he decided to do, and of course it's been continued now, and we can see that there is fraction around the country. But I don't think it's unique to Spain. I think there's fracture in many countries around the world at the moment. People seem to be very, very divided, and if you watch a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, you can understand why this is happening at the moment. So it could be in part due to Mr. Zapatero, or it could be in part due to other factors like the ones that you will see in that documentary. So check it out. One here from Mark. Good news, we can cancel Christmas dinner with the in-laws. Yeah, Mark, thanks for the comment. I'll add that to my good news section for the day. No Christmas dinner this year with the in-laws. And it is one of the things in Spain that I like the least. Every Christmas we have to get dressed up, go and have dinner at the in-laws, and it is a huge feast. I always leave that feast very uncomfortable with a very full stomach at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it is not my favorite day of the year. And you're right, maybe this year we won't have to do it. And you're right, maybe this year we might be able to avoid it. And the final one here from James. Hi Stu, how about doing a word of the day? We love the chorizos reference. Never knew those little red sausages could be such rogues. Yeah, James, thanks for the comment. Obviously referring to the word chorizo that I mentioned yesterday. It is not the cured meat that many people think it is. It can also be a term used here to talk about thieves in both a political context and a normal crime context. If somebody is a chorizo, they normally steal money from you. Ese hombre es un chorizo, meaning that he is a thief. And I could incorporate a Spanish word of the day into the video, so thank you very much for that. I'll see if I can get that organized for the next news video. I did something similar a couple of months ago, I think. I was doing an expression of the day, and some people seem to like that, so I will, in the future, try to do a Spanish word of the day. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.